Boston Celtics created a new TPE. Sign and trade for the Knicks. They sent over a fake second-round pick to the Knicks to create a $17.1 million traded player exception. It feels like just a Boston staple at this point. Mike Zarin, I think it might be like his favorite thing ever to create TPEs to give themselves certain cap flexibilities, which I think is pretty smart. It reminds me kind of like the New Orleans Saints, what they've been doing over the past couple of years with signing bonuses and trying to like kick the can down there a little further so they can like ride out Drew Brees as much as humanly possible. But now that Brees is retired, their team is a little in tough shape. I think maybe that's what Boston did this offseason here by resetting things. But they create another TPE, $17.1 million. A couple of guys that make that kind of money. Bertans, of course, over in Washington. Steven Adams. I think that's unlikely. I love Steven Adams. He's a great guy, but I'm not sure if he fits this roster. Malik Beasley, Christian Wood, a couple other guys that fit like that number. But
DeJounte Murray's the one people love.
Yeah,
but finally fit him into there.
I don't know if that's going to be the guy. Like, I feel like now that we saw that with the Gordon Hayward TPE, this feels like, okay, they'll go after somebody with a smaller salary and use some of it and then push down the line to, next.
Yeah, like split it in half.
Yeah, I think that's what they're going to do. I think it's smart they do this kind of stuff. I mean, it saved them a little bit. I mean, with the Kyrie debacle, the fact that they were able to get Kemba through different venues and creating that sign and trade and whatever. And they've been able to manipulate a few things and save face a few different ways. Like, you don't just lose Gordon Hayward. You at least got something and got something and got something and got something. Again, it wasn't the most ideal scenarios all the way through, but they've been able to try and, okay, we didn't totally lose him for nothing. We can keep trying to figure out how to grab certain guys. So I like the fact that they're doing that. I guess the one thing I'll say is, like, I think we're numb to the like sexy, it could be this guy in the team. Like, I think we're all numb to that now. I think it's like, all right, look, Boston just did this so they can create some like financial and roster flexibility at some point. They'll probably get two guys with it, and maybe one of them will stick. Like, maybe it will. Like, maybe they'll get a full year of Josh Richardson here, and it'll be great, and it'll work out, and he can pump up Richardson's trade value or his value next offseason or whatever. Like, we'll see how it goes, but like, I think we've become reserved to the fact that nothing's real sexy is probably going to happen with this new TPE, Bobby.
Yeah, and I think it's part of a ladder process that we talked about with Smart. Like, his salary bump gets you a little closer to matching like a super max deal type situation, and then these things just sort of stack the deck with contracts here. That's sort of the thinking with Richardson too, is that, all right, Richardson's a good fit on this team and he's a guy that can help them now, but it's also just preserving that 11 million going forward. You can maybe even sign him to a new deal with the bird rights you have for him now to keep that money on the books here. You could add and the reason you probably wouldn't split that in half, I guess, would be to have one contract that's sizable enough to go toward matching. Like, I look at a Thad Young, maybe, making 14 or something like that. You mentioned Beasley. His money definitely fits that bill. You obviously need a guy who's going to have some player value in that sense, but I do think this is part of a ladder process of piling up salaries that are more tradable than what the Celtics have had in the past. They've had these massive salaries. They've had these tiny salaries like Rob Williams and Grant Williams that just don't do anything for you in trades. And really, the team got stuck at many spots the past couple of years because they just couldn't match salary for trades outside of Marcus Smart. So they definitely put themselves in a more flexible situation here. I think we always heard flexibility from them and thought, like, all right, they want as much cap space as possible. The encouraging thing here is it sort of flew in the face of two assumptions we made. They might be willing to take on some long-term money here if it's going to be tradable. They might be willing to extend a guy like Rob Williams possibly at this point because it adds some more money to the books. Like, there's more possibilities and routes that they can go now than just clearing the deck of contracts. And I love this because there's just a lot of different ways you can go. You can solidify the team this year a little bit more through this process. Add a guy at the deadline who could really help this team because they're in a good position to win a little bit this year, I think, with what they have right now. They obviously have their picks at their disposal, which is going to help with the TPEs. But I am frustrated with one thing about the Smart situation here, because now we're kind of talking about Fournier. I really liked Fournier. Like, especially when we learned that the fourth year was non-guaranteed with him. Was it crazy to bring him back at 3-60, especially now that you have Smart at 4-77 going forward? You don't need the cap space. he's probably somewhat of a tradable contract in the different scenarios that we kick around here. Like, is he any less tradable than Beasley and Young and some of these guys we kick around? I thought he was a great fit on this roster beyond it all. He brought spacing. He brought secondary playmaking. He had a few monster scoring games in there in the handful of games that he played with the team here. And it really doesn't feel like they engaged him at all about bringing him back, which I understood if you were going to keep the deck cleared cap wise. But now that you've kept Smart, I think Fournier would have been a great pair for him, the Jays, and would have been probably somewhat movable going forward. You get through this 1 year, you have 2 guaranteed years left after. And, he probably would have been much more movable at that point. They probably have some idea of what his value is around the league, and maybe that turned them off to having that versus a TPE here. But again, you have to use picks. You have to give up some sort of value here going forward to actually turn this TPE into something. And it's not going to be as good as Evan Fournier in my mind.
Yeah, and Fournier's like as your first option is not a great idea, but when he's your fourth or your third, it looks a lot better. And like,
It
yeah,
felt like a lot of Celtics fans didn't like him. I did.
I like Fournier. The problem with Fournier was like everybody remembers he went like 0 for a million to start, and then what was good, then got COVID, then took time to get back. So we never really got a solid idea of what like Fournier looks like when he's fully integrated in the system. And yeah, I would have loved to see that, but like at the same time, you know, paying him 20 million, like, do you want to pay him 20 million? I just,
I kind of, if you're a shooter in this league and he can shoot, he had 7 of 11 games from 3. I haven't
yeah.
seen a Celtic do that in a long time.
Well, I think also too that maybe Boston got scared of like, okay, what if he just kicks ass in the Olympics? And like they made the move early to get Richardson and just say like that's going to be our, that's going to be the guy we go with instead of we'll just wave by to Fournier. And I think they got maybe a little scared of like what that looks like later on. But I think they just wanted to move quickly and just have like their roster set. I do think that they want to have this whole thing pretty much wrapped up. And the only thing now is like, what do they do with Robert Williams? They wanted to have like an idea in place for Ime to give him like again his full roster pretty early in the off season. I think there's some value to that. I mean, look, I like Fournier as a player. I think he fit Boston really well. He provided them again that secondary playmaking, is a good off ball mover. The ball doesn't really stick with him. He's a good player. I am curious how he fits in New York. Not everybody's made for that spotlight, and Thibodeau is. We'll see how he works. Yeah, we'll see how Kemba's knee holds up, and we'll see if Fournier holds up with Thibodeau here as well. So I am curious. I'd like Fournier, but I think at 20 million, when you're trying to preserve like long-term flexibility, I think that somewhat hinders you a little bit here. But again, it's not like I don't like the player. I liked Fournier. I thought it was a good dart throw, so to speak. And I think it would have worked out better if, again, the guys were healthier. But this was just the season from hell last year, so it's just unfortunate.
Yeah, we'll see. I think he still would have kept some flexibility, and I just hope it isn't tax. We'll see where they go with this tax thing. Brad said yesterday that they'll pay the tax. They'll go deeper into the tax. That's why they didn't want to hard cap themselves. I always thought Fournier was partially letting him go. Actually, was partially tax motivated because he would have been a substantial money commitment to ownership through the tax, and maybe that's not a guy that's worth doing that, but this TPE is going to be tax money too. So we'll see if they actually do commit to something with that this year.
Yeah.